what is the difference between Medicaid and Medicare?
So I mentioned that the legislation that enabled that is the same. It actually came about from a very similar conversation that we hear going on today about universal health care. In the 1960s, we attempted in Johnson's great society to have universal coverage for all individuals. The same arguments that applied then applied now. People liked their coverage, doctors were afraid of it, hospitals were afraid of it, insurance companies were opposed to it. All the same arguments that you hear today existed back then as well. And ultimately Congress said, we're not going to be able to pass this, there's not going to be enough consensus, but at least can we cover our elderly, our seniors? Because unless you worked for IBM or General Motors or some big company that provided a lengthy pension benefit that included health care, you were on your own. And so once you hit retirement, started receiving Social Security benefits, you had to pay out of pocket for every doctor visit, out of pocket for every hospital visit. There wasn't insurance, so to speak, to cover you. Certainly not employer-provided insurance. There was no employer. And so the Medicare system came about to say, okay, we're going to charge working people part of their tax that they're going to pay. You know, we pay that line in your check every 2 weeks that says FICA. Well, that FICA goes to two things. It goes toward paying for your Social Security benefit, and it also goes toward paying for your Medicare benefit at some point in the future. So essentially, if you or a spouse work 10 years paying into the system, when you hit 65, you qualify, you have paid to qualify for this Medicare benefit. It is what we call an entitlement program because you're entitled to it. You have earned that benefit and have paid premiums for it during your working years. And after those working years, you're then covered by that Medicare system. There's an additional system you can opt into called Part B that does require an additional premium. It's still a really great deal and most people will jump into. That being said, and that's, by the way, completely run by the federal government. There's no state involvement in the Medicare system. The Medicaid system, while it's named something similar, is a very different program. You don't pay a dime to participate in the Medicaid system. The Medicaid system is not an entitlement program, it's a means-based program to provide that social safety net, the medical care for people that are the poorest of the poor among us that cannot afford for that level of care. And so if your assets are too high, your income's too high, you don't qualify. If you're below those levels, then we're going to provide that. But again, because the states contribute to that, the state runs that program. It's actually run in Mississippi by the Division of Medicaid. And all 50 states and the District of Columbia have similar programs that operate the same under the same legislation, but differently because they all have different choices that they make as to what's covered and what's not, different choices within the realm of what's permitted by the federal government on the high end and low end. But so they're similar but different, but all are run by the states.
Gotcha. So do those individuals that qualify for Medicare, those 65 and older, would they also be able to qualify for Medicaid?
So you're referring to something we call dual eligibles, where you have a dual eligibility. You qualify for Medicare because you worked, but you might also qualify for Medicaid because your assets and income are below a certain level. And there are people that, in fact, do qualify for that. In fact, there's a specific program for those individuals.
So it's not one or the other.
It's not necessarily one or the other. Usually, though, most people that are on Medicare also have worked and they have sufficient assets that are above that $4,000 threshold. Again, not a high threshold. And so most people that are on Medicare don't qualify for Medicaid, but some do. There are some dual eligibles, and there's some great benefits for them because what Medicare doesn't cover, Medicaid picks up. So Medicaid picks up the copay. Medicaid picks up drugs that Medicare won't pay for, and such as that.